October 4th, 1943, 952 hours, 30,000 feet above Holland. Colonel Frank Mitchell rolls his Republic P-47 Thunderbolt into a 70-degree dive. 51 more Thunderbolts followed. 7 tons of aircraft and ammunition accelerating at terminal velocity. The massive propeller bites into thin air. The Pratt & Whitney R-2800 double wasp engine roars at full military power. 2,000 horsepower converted into momentum that German pilots below do not yet understand. The airspeed needle climbs. 300 miles per hour. 350. 400. The control stick vibrates in his hands, not from mechanical failure, from air molecules compressed beyond normal limits as 7 tons of American engineering approaches speeds that lighter aircraft cannot survive. 420 miles per hour. Faster than anything the Luftwaffe flies can dive without wings tearing away from fuselage. Below, through broken autumn clouds, 73 German Focke-Wulf 190 fighters climb toward the American bomber formation. Black crosses painted on wings. Veteran pilots who dominated European skies for 4 years. They focus on B-17 bombers flying straight and level at 22,000 feet. 600 American airmen heading toward industrial targets deep into Germany. Easy targets when fighter escorts turn back at the border. The Germans never look up, never see 52 Thunderbolts screaming down at impossible speed. Not until Mitchell's 8 Browning M2 50 caliber machine guns open fire 500 yards. The first Focke-Wulf disintegrates, metal and fabric and pilot becoming debris falling toward Dutch farmland. What happens in the next 90 seconds will change aerial warfare forever. But understanding why requires going back. Back to Michigan. Back to a father who flew over France in 1918. Back to a wife who wrote a letter that sits in Mitchell's flight suit pocket at this exact moment. A letter written after 5 American pilots died because tactics were wrong and Mitchell could not save them. The letter says 2 things that matter. 5 mothers received telegrams because you could not save them. Find a way, Frank. Find a way or stop sending boys to die. Promise made. Promise being kept right now through mathematics and physics and understanding that doctrine kills when doctrine contradicts reality. The dive continues. 430 miles per hour. Vision narrows from G-forces. Gray edges closing in. He eases back pressure slightly. Vision clears. Target still centered. German formation still unaware. This is where mathematics meets courage, where physics overrides tradition, where one pilot proves that the difficult becomes possible when you refuse to quit. Go back to the beginning. Understand how a Michigan farm boy became a man willing to question everything. Grand Rapids, Michigan, 1925. Frank Mitchell is 11 years old. Frank grows up on a small farm outside Grand Rapids. 160 acres of Michigan soil. Corn mostly, some livestock. Enough to feed a family and sell surplus at market. Not enough to make anyone wealthy, but enough to teach lessons about work and responsibility and land that demands constant attention. His father returned from France in 1919, flew sop with camels with the American Expeditionary Forces, shot down 2 German Fokkers before the armistice, survived when many did not, came home, never flew again, worked the farm, raised his son, talked about the war exactly once in a way that mattered. Frank was 16. Summer evening, watching a barnstormer aircraft circle above the farm performing loops and rolls for crowds gathered at the county fairground 2 miles distant. The biplane catching golden light, engine sound carrying across fields. Frank asked the question that had sat between them for years. Why did you stop flying, Dad? His father set down his fork, looked at his son with eyes that had seen things the boy could not imagine yet, spoke words slowly like each one cost something. The sky demands perfection, son. The ground forgives mistakes. I had my war, lost friends who made mistakes at altitude where mistakes kill instantly. You will have your war someday. Everyone does eventually. When yours comes, be better prepared than I was. Understand your equipment. Understand physics. Courage without knowledge kills brave men, while cowards who understand mathematics survive to fight again. Lesson learned. Lesson remembered. Lesson applied 20 years later when courage alone proves insufficient. His mother taught mathematics at the local high school, brought work home. Dinner table became classroom where equations lived alongside mashed potatoes. Lift equals velocity squared times coefficient times wing area divided by 2. Stall speed depends on square root of weight divided by wing area times coefficient. Numbers do not lie when calculations are correct. Intuition lies constantly when emotion overrides logic. Frank absorbed this understanding the way some children absorb languages or music. Mathematics made sense. The world operated according to rules that could be calculated and predicted and optimized. Aircraft wings generated lift through Bernoulli principle applied to airfoil shape. Engines produce power through fuel combustion, converting chemical energy to mechanical rotation. Everything explainable. Everything predictable. Age 16, Frank soloed at the local airfield, washed aircraft on weekends in exchange for flight instruction. An old barnstormer named Pete Williams taught farm boys who could not afford lessons but would work for opportunity. Pete had flown over France the same time as Frank's father. Different squadron, same war, same understanding that the sky belongs to those who respect physics. Pete taught Frank that specifications on paper differ from reality in air. Stall speed calculated at sea level increases with altitude as air thins. Turn radius depends on velocity and bank angle and load factor. Every maneuver has a cost measured in airspeed lost or altitude consumed. Energy management matters when energy determines whether you live or die. Age 18. Frank scored highest marks in mathematics and physics on the Army Air Corps entrance examination. Mediocre marks in evaluation of natural flying ability. Instructors noted that the pilot thinks too much, needs to feel the aircraft instead of calculating everything. But Frank understood that feeling fails when stress overwhelms instinct, while mathematics remain constant regardless of fear or fatigue. 1938 through 1941. Frank worked as a test pilot at Wright Field in Ohio, evaluated new fighter designs. P-35, P-36, P-40 Warhawk, pushed each aircraft to its performance limits, documented exactly where each design succeeded and where it failed. Learn that book knowledge gets you killed when it contradicts physical reality. Tested knowledge keeps you alive. December 1940. Frank married Mary Henderson at a small church in Grand Rapids. She was a nurse at the local hospital. Both were 26 years old. Born the same year, grew up in the same county, found each other through mutual friends who understood that some people fit together through shared values rather than opposite attractions. Mary was practical, intelligent, beautiful in a way that combined physical attraction with deeper compatibility. She understood that his obsession with mathematics was not coldness, but a different expression of caring. Caring through preparation, through understanding, through refusing to accept that problems lack solutions. She asked him once early in their marriage why he calculated everything instead of just living moment to moment like normal people. He answered honestly, because moment to moment gets pilots killed when they react emotionally instead of thinking through consequences. Because understanding physics means understanding how to survive. Because I want to come home to you after every flight. Mary understood, accepted, supported. Some women marry warriors knowing what that choice was. Mary was one of those women. May 1942. David was born, 4 pounds, 6 ounces, healthy, perfect. Frank held his son in the hospital room, understanding that everything changed now. Not just responsible for his own survival anymore. Responsible for coming home to a wife and infant son who needed a father present, not a father heroic. This understanding mattered when Frank received orders 4 months later. Command of the 56th Fighter Group, new unit, new aircraft, new mission. Escort bombers deep into Germany using the Republic P-47 Thunderbolt, the biggest fighter ever built, most powerful fighter ever built, impressive on paper, deadly in practice when deadly means getting American pilots killed. January 1943. Colonel Frank Mitchell assumed command of the 56th Fighter Group at an airfield in England. The Republic P-47 Thunderbolt dominated the ramp. 7 tons empty weight, wingspan 40 feet. The Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp engine producing 2,000 horsepower through an 18-cylinder radial configuration. 8 Browning M2 50 caliber machine guns. Everything about the aircraft screamed power and capability. One problem, it could not turn with German fighters. The German Focke-Wulf 190 weighed 4 tons fully loaded. At 15,000 feet altitude, it completed a 360-degree turn in 22 seconds. The P-47 Thunderbolt weighed 7 tons fully loaded. Same altitude, same turn, 28 seconds required. 6 seconds difference. In aerial combat, 6 seconds meant death. The physics were simple. Lighter aircraft turns inside heavier aircraft every single time when both execute turns at maximum performance. German pilot in Focke-Wulf completes turn first, gets firing position first, shoots American pilot before American can bring guns to bear. American pilot dies. Bombers burn. Strategic bombing campaign collapses. Mitchell read the specifications before assuming command. Understood the weight disadvantage. Assumed tactics would compensate. American pilots trained extensively in aerial combat maneuvering. Knew how to use altitude advantage. Knew doctrine that emphasized mutual support and disciplined engagement. But doctrine was written by men who never faced Focke-Wulf 190s flown by Luftwaffe pilots with 4 years of combat experience. Doctrine assumed American aircraft could turn with German aircraft. Doctrine was wrong. Physics did not care about doctrine. The first 4 months proved it. January through May 1943, 11 P-47s lost. 4 pilots killed, 7 captured. Every loss followed the same pattern. German fighter attack bomber formation. American pilot engaged. German pilot turned. An American pilot followed. German completed turn first. American died. Mitchell read the after-action reports, interviewed surviving pilots, analyzed gun camera footage. Every engagement showed the same result. The P-47 could not stay with the Focke-Wulf through sustained turning fight, could not gain firing position, could not protect bombers when protection required matching enemy maneuverability. 8th Air Force generals watched the 56th Fighter Group struggle, watched another P-47 group struggle identically, made their decision, replaced the pawn with a new P-51 Mustang. Lighter, faster, better range, better turn performance. 5 fighter groups were scheduled to transition from Thunderbolts to Mustangs by the end of 1943. The P-47 program looked like a failed experiment. Good intentions, but wrong execution. Replace it with better design. Move forward. Accept losses as the cost of learning what does not work. But Mitchell understood something the generals missed. The aircraft did not fail. Tactics failed. The P-47 could not turn with the Focke-Wulf. Stop trying to make it turn. Find what the P-47 did better. Build tactics around actual strengths instead of desired capabilities. June 26, 1943. The mission that changed everything. The 56th Fighter Group escorted bombers to targets in France. Clear skies, perfect visibility. German radar tracked them crossing the channel. Jagdgeschwader 26 scrambled to intercept. Veteran pilots who knew their Focke-Wulfs intimately, who understood how to exploit every advantage. The engagement began at 10:45 hours over the French coast. German fighters dove through the bomber formation. American P-47s turned to engage. Physics took over. German fighters turned inside American turning radius, got firing positions, opened fire. Captain Robert Hayes saw tracers flash past his canopy, felt impacts hammering his aircraft, 20-millimeter cannon rounds punching through aluminum skin. He broke left, pulled hard. G-forces crushing him into his seat. The Focke-Wulf stayed with him through the turn. Stayed on his tail, kept firing, more impacts. Canopy shattered. Plexiglass fragments spraying cockpit. Hydraulic fluid misting red. Controls going mushy as hydraulic pressure dropped. Hayes kept turning, kept pulling, kept trying to shake the German off his tail. The German stayed prudent, professional, methodical, firing short bursts that walked across the P-47's fuselage from tail to cockpit. Hayes felt rounds impact behind his seat, felt his aircraft shuddering under repeated hits, counted mentally. 50 rounds, 75, 100, still flying, still responding to controls. His wingman called out, "Brake! Right! Brake! Right!" Hayes snapped the stick right. The Focke-Wulf followed easily. Tighter turn radius, better roll rate. Physics giving the German every advantage that mathematics predicted. More cannon fire. Hayes felt impacts in the left wing. In the tail section, in the engine cowling, the big Pratt and Whitney coughed once, caught again, kept running, American engineering absorbing punishment that would have destroyed lighter aircraft instantly. The fight lasted 4 minutes. Hayes took over 200 cannon hits. His aircraft was shot to pieces. Half his control surfaces were gone. Hydraulics failed completely. Manual reversion only, but 7 tons of American armor and structural engineering kept flying, kept responding to controls, brought Hayes home despite damage that should have been fatal. 4 other P-47 pilots were not as fortunate. 4 Thunderbolts went down in flames. 4 American pilots died in the space of 15 minutes, shot down by German fighters who turned better and exploited every advantage that physics provided. Hayes landed at 13:47 hours, shut down the engine, sat in the cockpit for a full minute unable to move, hands shaking, breath coming in ragged gasps, understanding settling over him like ice water. He had not survived through skill. He survived through luck. And luck runs out. Ground crew gathered around his aircraft, counted the damage, shook their heads at the impossibility of it. Over 200 holes, cannon strikes that went completely through the fuselage, control cables severed, hydraulic lines cut, fuel tanks punctured. The aircraft should not be flying, should be in pieces scattered across French countryside. But it flew. The P-47 was tough, could absorb incredible punishment, could bring pilots home who should be dead. But toughness was not enough when toughness meant surviving to die on the next mission, because tactics did not change and physics remained constant. Mitchell watched Hayes climb out of the wreckage, watched the young captain's hands shake, watched understanding spread through the squadron like plague. Current tactics were a death sentence, just executed slowly across multiple missions until no pilots remained. That night, Mitchell sat alone in his quarters, wrote 5 letters by lamplight to mothers and wives of pilots who would not come home, explaining their sons and husbands died bravely serving the nation, not explaining they died unnecessarily because tactics contradicted physics, and following failed doctrine killed people who followed orders faithfully. Each letter took an hour, finding words to explain the inexplicable. How to tell a mother her son is dead, how to tell a wife her husband is gone. The words came slowly, inadequately, honestly as possible without revealing that better tactics might have saved their lives. Mary's letter arrived 2 days later. She knew already. 5 families had received telegrams. 5 families grieved. She wrote not as a wife needing comfort, but as a woman who understood her husband well enough to know he was calculating everything including guilt. Her handwriting was steady. Her words were clear. 5 mothers received telegrams because you could not save them. Frank, I know you. I know you are calculating right now. I know you are analyzing numbers and performance and tactics. Find a way or stop sending boys to die. David is only 1 year old. He needs his father to come home. But I also need you to bring other fathers home. All of them. Promise me. Mitchell read the letter 3 times, folded it carefully, placed it in his footlocker, made a promise silently. No ceremony, no witnesses. Just understanding between husband and wife, separated by ocean and war, that some things matter more than career or reputation, or following doctrine. When doctrine kills people you promise to protect. Promise made June 28, 1943. Promise to be tested October 4th. Promise to be kept through mathematics that revealed what courage alone could never achieve. July 1943, Mitchell stopped trying to make the P-47 turn. He spent 2 weeks reviewing test data from Wright Field, performance charts from Republic Aviation, specifications that separated marketing claims from engineering reality. One number stood out: terminal velocity and vertical dive. The P-47 was stable at speeds that tore apart the Focke-Wulf 190. The thick wing was designed for high-altitude operations. The heavy airframe was built around the massive radial engine. Weight that penalized turn performance became advantage in vertical dive. Momentum favored mass over maneuverability. Mitchell ran calculations on paper at his desk. Same mathematics his mother taught at the dinner table 20 years earlier. Force equals mass times acceleration. In horizontal turn, lighter mass accelerates faster for same force input. But in vertical dive, heavier mass maintains the velocity better because momentum resists deceleration from air resistance. At 30,000 feet altitude, the P-47 in a 70-degree dive reached 450 miles per hour in approximately 30 seconds. The Focke-Wulf 190 maximum dive speed before structural failure threatened was 410 miles per hour. 40 miles per hour advantage. In dive, heavier winds because physics favors momentum. New tactics emerge from the mathematics. Position 8,000 feet above bombers. Wait for German formations to commit to attack. Dive from above at maximum speed. Hit Germans from an angle they do not expect at speed they cannot match. Single high-speed pass. No turning, no dogfighting. Use speed to zoom back to altitude. Repeat. Simple. Elegant. Completely contrary to every fighter doctrine taught in the Army Air Forces. Doctrine said dogfight. Said turn with the enemy. Said maneuverability wins aerial combat. Mitchell's mathematics said doctrine was wrong for this aircraft. The P-47 could not turn. Accept the limitation, exploit the alternative advantage. Choose vertical over horizontal. Win through physics instead of tradition. July through September, 1943. The 56th Fighter Group practiced new tactics. Dive bombing runs against ground targets. High-speed gunnery passes. Energy management exercises. Every pilot learned to think three-dimensionally. Vertical fights favor heavier aircraft. Horizontal fights favor lighter aircraft. Choose vertical. Avoid horizontal. Use physics as weapon instead of fighting physics as enemy. Pilots resisted initially. Training had emphasized dogfighting. Traditional aerial combat learned from instructors who flew Spitfires and Hurricanes against Messerschmitts over Britain. Mitchell asked them to ignore everything they learned, to fight using physics instead of instinct, to trust mathematics over experience and emotion. Mitchell explained patiently, showed the data, demonstrated the calculations, proved the 6-second turn disadvantage was insurmountable in horizontal fight, proved the 40 miles per hour dive advantage was equally insurmountable for Germans in vertical fight when Americans chose when and where to engage. Choose the battlefield favoring your strengths. Avoid the battlefield favoring enemy strengths. Sun Tzu wrote it 2,000 years ago. Physics proved it every single time. Senior pilots understood first. Hayes understood because surviving 200 cannon hits taught that luck was insufficient and new approach was necessary. Carson understood because mathematics made sense to the engineer who studied aeronautics before war interrupted education. Bradford understood because he flew with Mitchell at Wright Field and trusted the analytical approach that saved lives through calculation rather than chance. Younger pilots followed the senior pilots, practiced, refined, developed instincts around new tactics. Until vertical thinking became natural and horizontal, fighting became automatically rejected regardless of enemy provocation or tactical temptation. By September, the group was ready. Tactics tested against ground targets, against towed drones, against other American fighters in training exercises. Everything proved the mathematics correct. Heavier aircraft diving from altitude advantage could not be caught by lighter aircraft regardless of lighter aircraft's superior turn performance when heavier aircraft refused to turn. But proof required real combat against real Germans who shot back with real ammunition that killed real American pilots when mathematics proved incorrect, or execution proved imperfect, or luck proved insufficient despite correct theory. September 1943. 8th Air Force bomber losses were accelerating toward unsustainable levels. The strategic bombing campaign depended on destroying German industrial capacity through daylight precision bombing. But precision bombing required bombers surviving to the target. Bombers required fighter protection. Fighter protection required tactics that worked against Luftwaffe pilots who knew how to kill and had 4 years of practice doing it successfully. Current tactics did not work. The P-47s could not turn with Focke-Wulfs. P-51 Mustangs were not available in sufficient numbers yet. The strategic bombing campaign was failing. Losses mounting. Pressure building. Generals questioning whether daylight bombing was viable strategy or fatal mistake. Mitchell received orders October 2nd. Bomber escort mission October 4th. Deep penetration into Germany. Intelligence estimated 180 German fighters defending the industrial targets. Maximum effort, maximum risk. Maximum opportunity to prove the new tactics either worked or failed definitively under combat conditions that would reveal truth. Mitchell would position 52 Thunderbolts at 30,000 feet. The bombers would fly at 22,000, 8,000 feet of altitude difference, 8,000 feet of potential energy ready to convert into kinetic energy through gravity and diving speed, into attacking speed that Germans would not expect, because Germans assumed American fighters escorted bombers by flying formation alongside them, not by circling 8,000 feet above, waiting for mathematics to create killing opportunity. Mary's letter sat in his footlocker. He read it again the night before the mission. 5 mothers received telegrams because you could not save them. Find a way, Frank. David needs his father, but other children need their fathers too. He had found a way. Through mathematics, through physics. Through understanding that doctrine could be wrong when it contradicted reality, and changing doctrine saved lives even when changing doctrine contradicted everything taught at every training program. Tomorrow would prove whether the calculations were correct, whether physics overrode tradition, whether one man could change doctrine through understanding mathematics better than tradition understood courage. October 4th, 1943 would be the test. Mitchell climbed into his P-47 cockpit at 0830 hours. The letter was in his flight suit pocket now. Over his heart, a promise made 3 months ago, about to be kept or broken based on whether mathematics worked when bullets flew and Germans fought back. Pre-flight checks complete. Engine start. The big radio coughed once, then caught with a roar that shook the airframe. Taxi. Takeoff. The heavy fighter used every foot of the runway, climbed slowly at first, then faster as fuel burned and weight decreased. Formation assembly over the North Sea. 52 Thunderbolts, all climbing to 30,000 feet, all trusting new tactics that contradicted everything they learned in training, all depending on mathematics being correct when theory met reality. Course set for Holland. The bomber stream became visible below, contrails marking their path toward targets deep in Germany. 600 American airmen trusting that someone would protect them, that fighters would not turn back at border, that escort would stay with them into the teeth of German defenses. 0952 hours. Mitchell spotted the German formation assembling 15 miles ahead. 73 Focke-Wulf 190s climbing into attack position at 18,000 feet. Standard Luftwaffe doctrine. Gain altitude advantage over bombers. Dive through the formation. Use speed to escape before escorts can react. But Mitchell's 52 Thunderbolts sat 12,000 feet above the Germans. The Germans focused on the bombers below. Never looked up. Never expected attack from above at speeds they could not match, using tactics they had never seen. Mitchell checked his instruments one final time. Airspeed, altitude, fuel, everything normal, everything ready. His right hand rested on the stick, his left hand on the throttle. 850 caliber machine guns loaded and ready, 3,200 rounds total, enough to prove mathematics correct or die trying. Below, the German formation continued climbing. Unaware, focused on the bombers, flying into a killing zone that did not know existed because Americans had never flown this way before. Mitchell thought about Mary, about David, just 16 months old, too young to remember father if father did not come home. About 5 pilots who died because tactics were wrong. About promise made to find a way or stop sending boys to die. About mathematics that said heavier winds in vertical dive, even though lighter winds in horizontal turn, and choosing vertical over horizontal meant choosing physics over tradition. He took a breath, rolled left, pushed the stick forward. The nose dropped, 70 degrees down. The dive began. Behind him, 51 Thunderbolts followed into the attack, 7 tons accelerating, 300 miles per hour, 350, 400. The mathematics converting into physics, physics converting into tactics, tactics converting into survival for 600 bomber crew below, and validation of promise made to wife back home, 420 miles per hour. Vision narrowing, gray edges closing, eased back pressure, vision cleared, 500 yards to target, 400, 300, everything depending on the next 3 seconds. Promise made to Mary, lives of pilots who trusted new tactics, 600 airmen in bombers who trusted someone would protect them. 250 yards, 200. Mitchell's fingers tightened on the trigger. This was where mathematics met courage, where physics overrode tradition, where promise became action that would either save lives or end in failure, that proved generals right and Mitchell wrong. The Germans still had not looked up, still climbing toward bombers, still unaware that 7 tons of American fighter was diving at them at 430 miles per hour. 150 yards. Mitchell fired. 850 caliber machine guns roared to life. Tracers converging on lead Focke-Wulf. The test beginning now. Mathematics about to prove correct or fatal. Promise about to be kept or broken. 90 seconds that would change everything starting in 3, 2, 1, 150 yards. Mitchell's 850 caliber machine guns roar to life. Tracers converge on the lead Focke-Wulf like rivers meeting. Armor-piercing incendiary rounds walk from tail to cockpit in half-second burst. The German fighter disintegrates. Metal tears. Fabric shreds. Engine cowling exploding. Pilot never sees what kills him. Just impact and then nothing. The wreckage tumbles toward Dutch farmland 4 miles below, trailing black smoke. 90 seconds begin now. 51 more thunderbolts scream through the German formation at 430 miles per hour. Each P-47 carries 8 Browning M2 machine guns. Each gun fires 800 rounds per minute. Combined firepower of the group puts 68,000 rounds into the sky every 60 seconds. The mathematics of overwhelming force applied through physics that German pilots cannot counter. German pilots try to react, try to turn, try to break away. But physics deny them every option. A Focke-Wulf at 400 miles per hour cannot pull out of a dive as quickly as the heavier P-47. The Thunderbolt's thick wing handles G-forces better. The massive structure absorbs stress that tears lighter aircraft apart at extreme speeds. Mitchell pulls up hard after his first pass. 7 Gs crush him into the seat. Vision tunnels to gray point directly ahead. He eases back pressure before consciousness fades. Peripheral vision returns. He rolls inverted, looks back at the carnage developing below. The German formation has scattered like startled birds. No cohesion, no mutual support. Just individual fighters trying to survive what they cannot understand. Americans attacking from above at speeds Germans cannot match, using tactics Germans have never encountered in 4 years of war. Mitchell's wingman calls over radio. 2 more down. That makes 3 total. 11 seconds since combat began. Mathematics working exactly as calculated. Captain Robert Hayes dove through a section of 4 Focke-Wulfs clustered together for mutual defense. Fired 1 burst. 3 seconds. 240 rounds. The lead German's right wing folded backward and tore off at the root. The fighter tumbled out of control. The pilot did not eject, either dead already from cockpit hits or frozen by shock of wing separation. Hayes pulled up hard, used his remaining speed to climb back toward altitude. Energy management. Convert velocity to altitude. Trade speed for position. Never get slow where Germans can catch you. Major Frank Carson hit a Focke-Wulf head-on, closing speed over 700 miles per hour. Both pilots firing. Carson's rounds hit first by fraction of second. The German's engine cowling shattered. Pieces flew backward through the cockpit. The fighter snap rolled left violently. Out of control. Carson flashed past so close he felt the turbulence wash over his canopy. Pulled up vertical, used the Thunderbolt's power to climb straight up 3,000 feet. Rolled over at the top, dove back down for another attack. 20 seconds since combat began. 6 German fighters destroyed. 73 became 67. The mathematics working, the physics working, the tactics working exactly as Mitchell calculated on paper 3 months ago. But the Germans were professionals. Veterans with years of combat experience across multiple fronts. They adapted quickly, started coordinating. Small groups of 2 and 3 forming defensive circles. Using their superior turn performance to protect each other in horizontal plane, where Focke-Wulf still held advantage. Mitchell saw the tactic developing, called warning over radio. Do not chase into the circles. Stay high, maintain speed, pick off stragglers only. Do not commit to turning fight under any circumstances. His pilots obeyed. Discipline held. Training proved stronger than combat adrenaline and temptation to chase easy kills. Each Thunderbolt made 1 high-speed pass, fired at targets of opportunity, dove through the formation, used remaining speed to climb back to altitude advantage. 4 minutes to regain 8,000 feet of position, 4 minutes to reset the tactical geometry, then dove again. The Germans could not climb fast enough to escape diving attacks, could not dive fast enough to run away from heavier aircraft that maintained speed better, could not turn because the P-47s never committed to turning fights. Just diving attacks, high-speed passes, zoom climbs, repeat the cycle. Physics denying Germans every counter tactic. 30 seconds since combat began. 9 German fighters down. Burning wreckage falling. Parachutes blossoming white against autumn sky. Black smoke trails marking where aircraft were moments ago. The sky filling with debris and chaos, and understanding that something fundamental had changed in aerial warfare. A Focke-Wulf tried diving away from Lieutenant Colonel Jim Bradford's attack. The German pilot pushed his stick forward hard. Fighter went vertical in desperate attempt to escape. Bradford stayed with him. Both aircraft accelerating past 450 miles per hour, past 470. The Focke-Wulf started buffeting violently. Structural limits approaching. Airframe never designed for sustained speeds this extreme. At 490 miles per hour, the right wing failed catastrophically, tore away from fuselage in shower of fragments. The wreckage tumbled end over end toward Earth. Bradford pulled out at 15,000 feet, 7 Gs compressing his body, vision graying completely, muscles straining against blood pooling in lower extremities. He held the pull until airspeed bled to 200 knots, then eased back pressure carefully, leveled out, checked fuel gauge, checked ammunition counter. Everything still good. Looked for next target through canopy still clear. 60 seconds since combat began. 14 German fighters destroyed. 59 remained out of original 73. But the 59 were breaking, running. The coordinated attack on bombers completely abandoned. Every German now fighting for his own survival instead of mission objective. Mitchell watched them scatter east, toward their bases near Antwerp and Brussels, towards safety and fuel and understanding that this mission was lost. Part of him wanted to chase, to press the attack, to kill more Germans while killing was easy and targets were vulnerable. But discipline overrode aggression. Mission was protecting bombers, not accumulating personal victories, not chasing kills for sake of numbers. He called over radio clearly. Reform on me, 30,000 feet, escort position, mission continues. 52 Thunderbolts climbed back to altitude, took positions above bomber stream 8,000 feet below. Germans gone. Sky clear except for falling debris and parachutes drifting. Mission continuing toward targets deeper in Germany. By 3 hours, the combat was over. 11 minutes after it began. The bomber stream flew on toward industrial targets unmolested. Not one German fighter reached firing range of B-17s. Not one bomber felt a fighter attack during penetration phase. The 56th Fighter Group landed at RAF Haleworth between 1,300 and 1,400 hours. Ground crews counted ammunition expenditure from each aircraft. Gun cameras were pulled for film development and analysis. Intelligence officers began formal debriefing of every pilot separately to verify claims. The initial report seemed impossible to believe. The group claimed 21 confirmed German fighters destroyed, 8 probably destroyed, 16 damaged, 0 American aircraft lost, 0 pilots wounded, 0 significant damage to any Thunderbolt beyond normal combat wear. 8th Air Force Headquarters demanded immediate verification, sent investigation team to interview every pilot separately and independently, analyzed all gun camera footage frame by frame, cross-referenced with radar tracks from English coast stations, correlated with radio intercepts of German communications. Every claim checked out. October 4th, 1943 was real. 90 seconds of combat, 21 confirmed kills. Mathematics worked, physics worked, tactics worked beyond most optimistic predictions. But that was one mission, one day, one engagement. Could it work repeatedly? Could it work against adapted German tactics? Could it become doctrine rather than lucky experiment? Hauptmann Klaus Bergmann landed at his base near Antwerp at 1147 hours that morning. He climbed out of his Focke-Wulf slowly, age 31, 45 kills marked on his fuselage, Knight's Cross with oak leaves hanging at his throat, 3 years fighting British Spitfires and American P-47s across France and Low Countries. Survived through skill and caution and understanding that aggressive pilots get kills, but cautious pilots get old enough to retire. He was old at 31 in war, where average life expectancy of fighter pilot was measured in weeks, not years. Klaus walked to the debriefing room, other pilots already there, faces showing shock, confusion, fear beneath professional masks, emotions that combat veterans learned to hide but could not eliminate completely. Not after what they just experienced over Holland. The intelligence officer asked standard questions. How many American fighters? What tactics did they use? What altitude were they positioned? What speed did they achieve in attacks? Klaus answered slowly, choosing words carefully, trying to explain what seemed inexplicable to officer who had not witnessed it. The Americans came from above, much higher than we expected, dove at speeds we could not match, attacked and extended away before we could react or maneuver defensively, never turned, never committed to dogfight, used pure speed and altitude advantage systematically. The intelligence officer was skeptical initially. Americans do not innovate tactically. Americans use numbers and industrial capacity, not sophisticated tactics, not physics-based approach to air combat. But other pilots confirmed Klaus's report. Different perspectives from different positions and formation. Same story. Americans diving from extreme altitude at impossible speeds, never giving Focke-Wulf's chance to use superior turn performance that had dominated European skies for 4 years. Klaus sat alone after debriefing ended, thinking about what he witnessed. 5 of his pilots dead in 11 minutes. 5 aircraft destroyed. 5 families would receive telegrams within 48 hours. All from American fighters he thought were too heavy to be dangerous in turning combat. He began understanding something profound that contradicted 4 years of successful doctrine. The Americans fight with mathematics, not just courage or numbers. They analyzed the problem systematically, identified that P-47 cannot turn but can dive faster, built tactics around actual strengths instead of desired strengths or traditional approaches, refused to fight German fight on German terms, forced Germans to fight American fight using American advantages. Brilliant, dangerous, effective beyond anything Klaus expected. Klaus reported to a squadron commander, Major Ernst Hoffmann, veteran of France and Russia. 58 kills accumulated across 3 years, respected by every pilot in the unit for survival skills and tactical knowledge. Hoffmann listened to Klaus's analysis carefully, asked penetrating questions, understood implications immediately. The Americans have changed something fundamental. We must adapt or losses will accelerate beyond sustainable levels. But how? How do you counter an opponent who refuses to engage on terms you can win? How do you force a fight when the enemy chooses all engagements based on favorable conditions? How do you defeat physics when physics favor heavier aircraft in vertical dimension? Hoffmann had no answers. Neither did Klaus. The problem required thinking that contradicted 4 years of successful doctrine, required admitting that Americans could innovate tactically at sophisticated level, required changing Luftwaffe tactics that dominated European skies since 1939 through proven methods. Pride prevented admission. Doctrine prevented change. Losses accelerated anyway. October 1943 became the month that proved one mission was not luck or accident. October 8th, Bremen escort mission. The 56th Fighter Group intercepted 40 Messerschmitt 109s forming to attack the bomber stream over German border. Same tactics Mitchell developed. High altitude position, diving attacks from above, never turning. Never committing to dogfight regardless of tactical opportunity. 6 German fighters destroyed in single engagement, lasting 8 minutes. 0 American losses. Bombers completed mission without single loss to fighter attack. October 10th, Münster raid deep into Germany. 60 Focke-Wulfs attempted breaking through escort screen to reach bombers. Mitchell's pilots hit them in 3 successive diving passes, each pass destroying multiple Germans through coordinated attacks, each pass maintaining altitude discipline, each pass proving mathematics over tradition. 9 confirmed kills, 2 probables. Bombers completed their mission without losing single aircraft to fighter attack. Strategic bombing succeeding because escort tactics finally worked. October 14th was different. Schweinfurt again. The mission that nearly broke 8th Air Force. 8th Air Force launched 291 B-17s targeting ball-bearing factories critical to German war production. The Luftwaffe threw everything available into defending Schweinfurt. Over 300 fighters. Every available Jagdgeschwader. The decisive battle both sides knew was coming eventually. Mitchell was not flying that day. At 8th Air Force headquarters receiving British Distinguished Flying Cross for October 4th mission. Lieutenant Colonel Jim Bradford led the 56th into combat over Germany. Bradford followed Mitchell's tactics exactly. Position high, wait for German formations to commit to attack runs, dive through them at maximum speed. But the scale of battle overwhelmed every escort group. Too many German fighters. Not enough American escorts to cover entire bomber stream. The mathematics did not work when numbers exceeded sustainable ratios. 68 B-17s went down. 680 American airmen killed or captured in one afternoon. The worst single-day loss of the war for 8th Air Force. The strategic bombing campaign looked finished. American losses were unsustainable at this rate. The 56th Fighter Group claimed 16 German fighters destroyed that day, more than any other escort group. But it was not enough. The bombers kept burning. The campaign kept failing. Generals questioned whether daylight bombing was viable strategy. 4 days later, the answer came through combat. October 20th, 1943, Duisburg Railway Yards mission. Mitchell back in command. The mission followed new doctrine exactly. Group positioned at 32,000 feet, 10,000 feet above bomber stream. German fighters rose to meet the B-17s at standard intercept altitude. Mitchell counted contacts carefully. 73 Focke-Wulfs and Messerschmitts. Mixed formation from JG-26 and elements of JG-3. The formation leader was Major Wilhelm Steiner. 55 confirmed victories. 7 years combat experience spanning Spain, Poland, France, and Russia. Knew every tactic the Luftwaffe taught. Respected by Germans and Americans alike as professional warrior who understood honor, transcended nationalism. Steiner positioned his group for classic bounce attack on bombers. His fighters held altitude advantage over B-17s. Perfect formation discipline. He began the diving attack at 10:45 hours exactly on schedule. Mitchell was already diving when Steiner committed. His 52 Thunderbolts had 2,000 feet more altitude than Steiner's formation. They hit the Germans from above and behind at 470 miles per hour. Pure physics translated into tactical advantage. The German pilots never saw them coming until gun camera footage showed later. Mitchell led the first section personally, targeted Steiner's aircraft specifically. Leader-to-leader engagement, professional respect between warriors expressed through attempting to kill each other as efficiently as possible. Mitchell's guns converged on the Focke-Wulf bearing Wilhelm Steiner's victory marks and Knight's Cross insignia painted below cockpit. Fired 3-second burst, 720 rounds total, half missed at closing speeds, half hit center mass. Steiner's aircraft took multiple strikes in engine and cockpit. Engine seized immediately from catastrophic damage. Propeller windmilled to stop. Smoke pouring from cowling. The fighter entered uncontrolled spin at 23,000 feet. Witnesses saw Steiner try to bail out. Saw canopy jettisoned successfully. Saw him half out of cockpit fighting centrifugal forces. Then something failed. Either forces from spin pulled him back in, or he was already dead from cockpit hits, or he was wounded and could not complete bailout sequence. The aircraft spun all the way to ground impact. Wilhelm Steiner did not survive. The combat lasted 7 minutes. 17 German fighters went down in that window. The Luftwaffe lost one of its most experienced fighter leaders in a battle that lasted less time than it takes to brew coffee. Klaus Bergmann heard about Steiner's death that evening through official channels. They had flown together over France in 1941. Steiner taught Klaus energy management principles. How to maintain speed, how to use altitude, how to survive when survival seemed impossible. Now dead because Americans used those same principles better, with aircraft optimized for vertical fighting. The lesson was clear to Klaus. Luftwaffe doctrine dominated European skies for 4 years by gaining altitude and diving through with speed advantage. Americans were now using it better. Same fundamental tactic. Better execution. Different aircraft optimized for vertical fighting instead of horizontal turning. By October 31st, the 56th Fighter Group had flown 9 major combat missions in 1 month. Confirmed kill total for October was 39 German aircraft destroyed. The group that could not dogfight became highest-scoring fighter group in 8th Air Force. Luftwaffe intelligence began tracking American tactics systematically, called it Amerikanische Sturzflug tactic in official reports. American diving tactics had no effective counter for it within existing doctrine. November 1943. Luftwaffe commanders held emergency conferences across occupied Europe. The Americans had changed something fundamental about fighter combat. German fighter pilots reported P-47s attacking from impossible altitudes at speeds their aircraft could not match structurally. Traditional intercept tactics were not working against systematic application of physics. Major Gunther Rall commanded Jagdgeschwader 11. 275 confirmed victories accumulated across 3 years, one of Germany's most successful fighter pilots. He studied the 56th Fighter Group's tactics through intelligence reports and survivor accounts. Identified the core problem clearly. The P-47 pilots are not escorting bombers in traditional sense. They are hunting fighters. They ignore the B-17s completely and go after our formations before we can attack bombers. This is new. This is sophisticated. This is dangerous because it inverts our tactical assumptions. German fighter controllers tried adapting, sent formations at different altitudes, some high, some low, some from flanks. Goal was forcing American escorts to split forces, divide attention, create openings for bomber attacks through numerical superiority at point of contact. It did not work against Mitchell's vertical layering. He positioned his squadrons in vertical stack, one squadron at 30,000 feet, second at 28,000, third at 26,000. When Germans came high, top squadron dove. When Germans came low, bottom squadron dove. Middle squadron covered both and filled gaps. Every P-47 maintained enough altitude advantage to accelerate into attack speed. The vertical thinking that Mitchell taught became instinctive through repetition. Choose altitude. Convert to speed. Attack from advantage. Never surrender high ground. By late November, the Luftwaffe began avoiding areas where the 56th Fighter Group operated. German controllers listened to radio traffic carefully, identified Mitchell's call signs and voice patterns. When they heard his group in the area, they directed fighters to different sectors entirely. Better to miss attack opportunity than lose experienced pilots who could not be replaced at current loss rates. The mathematics had reversed completely. Germans who once hunted American bombers now avoided American fighters. Physics overriding tradition. Innovation defeating doctrine. One man's calculations changing aerial warfare across entire theater. But October was 1 month. November was 1 month. Could tactics work for a sustained campaign? Could they work at extreme range beyond normal fighter radius? Could they work over Berlin itself where Germans would defend with everything available? Winter 1943 into spring 1944. The 56th Fighter Group flew constant missions proving tactics repeatedly. Escort to Bremen, to Wilhelmshaven, to Munich. Every mission proved tactics worked. Every mission accumulated victories. Every mission brought pilots home alive. The group's reputation grew systematically. Germans feared them. Bombers requested them specifically. 8th Air Force studied them to extract lessons for other units. Other P-47 groups began adopting Mitchell's tactics after seeing results. The 78th Fighter Group, the 352nd, the 353rd. What started as one man's calculations became doctrine, spreading across entire command structure. But the ultimate test approached. The mission everyone said was impossible even with new tactics. Berlin, 510 miles into Germany. February 1944. Republic Aviation delivered modified external fuel tanks to RAF Hailworth. Each tank held 150 gallons. Standard P-47 internal fuel capacity was 305 gallons. External tanks increased total to 605 gallons. Combat radius jumped from 230 miles to 425 miles. Berlin was 510 miles from English coast. Within range of everything worked perfectly. The problem was weight at takeoff. Fully fueled P-47 with external tanks weighed 9 tons. Needed every foot of Hailworth's runway to get airborne. Once airborne, fuel weight affected climb performance dramatically. German fighters could intercept during vulnerable climb phase when American fighters were heavy and slow and unable to maneuver effectively. Mitchell calculated the solution systematically: take off with full fuel, climb slowly to altitude over England where German fighters could not reach. Burn off external tank fuel first during climb and cruise. Drop empty tanks before crossing into enemy territory. By time German fighters appeared, P-47s would be at combat weight with full internal fuel remaining. The mathematics worked on paper. Would they work over Berlin, where Germans would defend capital with everything available? March 6, 0700 hours. RAF Hailworth. Mitchell briefed his pilots for the deepest penetration mission ever attempted by American fighters. Berlin, 510 miles into Germany. The German capital had never been reached by escort fighters. Every previous Berlin raid lost bombers by dozens to unopposed Luftwaffe attacks. The mission plan was ambitious. 660 B-17s would hit industrial targets across Berlin. The raids would cripple German tank and aircraft production if bombers survived long enough to drop bombs accurately. 8th Air Force assigned 8 fighter groups to escort duty, total 800-plus fighters. But Germans would defend Berlin with everything available. Intelligence estimated 673 fighters would rise to defend the capital. The 56th Fighter Group crossed into Berlin airspace at 11:22 hours. First American fighters over the city in history. Mitchell spotted German formations at 11:24. 70-plus contacts at 28,000 feet, 5 miles ahead of bomber stream. Focke-Wulf 190s and Messerschmitt 109s had mixed together. The Luftwaffe had completed everything. The P-47s dove from 33,000 feet. Mitchell led personally. His flight hit the German formation at 460 miles per hour. The initial pass destroyed 6 fighters in 11 seconds. The German formation scattered instantly. The sky above Berlin became three-dimensional battlefield. P-47s diving from altitude. German fighters trying desperately to climb to bombers. Both forces colliding at 25,000 feet. 50 caliber tracers and 20mm cannon fire crisscrossing the airspace. Aircraft debris falling towards city below. Mitchell destroyed a Focke-Wulf over the Dummer Lake area east of Berlin. His second kill that day. His wingman got a Messerschmitt. The combat moved west as German fighters tried regrouping. The P-47 stayed with them relentlessly. Diving attacks, zoom climbs, no turning engagements. The tactics that worked in October worked over Berlin. The bomber stream reached target at 11:50 hours. Berlin's flak defenses opened fire. 2,000 anti-aircraft guns. The sky turned black with explosions. 69 B-17s took damage from flak. 11 went down. But not one bomber fell to German fighters during bomb run. The escorts held Luftwaffe away from formations. By 12:30 hours, the combat was over. Bombers turned west for home. German fighters broke off. Fuel exhaustion forced both sides to disengage. The 56th formed up and headed home. They landed at Hailworth at 14:40 hours. Total mission time, 6 hours, 10 minutes. Longest fighter mission flown by any American group to that date. Intelligence counted results carefully. 18 German fighters confirmed destroyed over Berlin, 4 probables, 9 damaged, 2 P-47s lost, 1 pilot recovered behind Allied lines, 1 captured. But numbers only told part of story. American fighters reached Berlin, protected bombers successfully, won air battle over German capital. The mission every expert said was impossible succeeded through mathematics and physics and discipline. Mitchell received Distinguished Service Cross for leading Berlin escort. The citation mentioned tactical innovations, leadership under fire, role in turning P-47 from liability into 8th Air Force's most successful fighter. But Mitchell thought about Wilhelm Steiner, about German pilots killed over Berlin defending their homeland, about understanding that victory required death and death created grief on both sides regardless of flags or nations or causes. Klaus Bergman read intelligence reports from Berlin mission, understood American tactics now proven at maximum range deep into Germany, understood Luftwaffe had no answer within existing capabilities, understood that war in air was lost not through lack of courage or aircraft, but through opponent who understood physics better than tradition, understood tactics. 3 months later, Allies would invade Normandy. American fighters would dominate skies over landing beaches. German fighters would be swept from French skies by tactics developed over Holland in October 1943 by one pilot who refused to accept that doctrine was final answer when doctrine contradicted mathematics. The promise made to Mary was being kept. Through physics, through discipline, through understanding that some problems have solutions when you refuse to accept that the difficult means impossible. Find a way or stop sending boys to die. Mitchell found the way, through mathematics proving stronger than tradition, through 7 tons diving at 450 miles per hour, through choosing vertical over horizontal every single time. October 4th started it, Berlin proved it, Normandy would finish it. The dive continues through every mission, the tactics continue through every engagement, the promise continues through every pilot brought home alive. Mathematics and courage, physics and promise. 7 tons of American engineering proving the difficult becomes possible when you refuse to quit. Always. May 1944. Allied forces prepare for Operation Overlord. D-Day requires absolute air superiority over the landing beaches. Luftwaffe fighters cannot reach the invasion fleet, cannot strafe the beaches, cannot interfere with airborne operations. That mission falls to fighter groups of 8th Air Force, the 56th Fighter Group among them. The group moves to Boxted Airfield in Essex, closer to French coast, better positioned for round-trip missions to Normandy. Their assignment is clear: sweep ahead of bombers, destroy German fighters before they reach invasion zones, maintain constant patrols over the channel protecting the greatest amphibious invasion in history. May 8th through June 5th, the group flies 32 missions in 29 days. Fighter sweeps, bomber escorts, armed reconnaissance, ground attack. The tempo exceeds anything from 1943. Pilots fly 6 days per week, sometimes twice per day. Everyone is exhausted. Everyone keeps flying because the invasion depends on air superiority, and air superiority depends on them. June 6, 1944. D-Day arrives at 0430 hours. Mitchell leads the first wave into French airspace. 51 P-47s sweep the coast ahead of the invasion fleet. Their mission is simple but critical: destroy any German aircraft attempting to reach the beaches. Not one Luftwaffe fighter will get through to strafe landing craft or bomb concentrations of troops. The sky over Normandy at dawn is empty of German aircraft. The Luftwaffe pulled back from coastal airfields days earlier. Allied intelligence knew they were positioning inland for counterattacks once invasion began. The 56th flies toward those inland airfields. If German fighters will not come to them, they go to the Germans. At 0620 hours, Mitchell spots aircraft taking off from an airfield near Évreux. Focke-Wulf 190s scrambling to meet the invasion. Still on the ground or just climbing. Most vulnerable moment in any flight. Heavy with fuel, slow, unable to maneuver effectively. The P-47s attack during the takeoff sequence. Mitchell leads the first pass, dives at 400 miles per hour. Guns converge on a Focke-Wulf halfway down the runway. Acceleration run. Pilot committed, cannot abort, cannot turn. Can only try to get airborne before American guns find him. The German never gets airborne. Mitchell's burst catches the fighter at rotation speed. 60 knots, and too slow to fly, too fast to stop safely. Rounds walk through cockpit and engine. The Focke-Wulf veers left violently, crashes into trees at runway edge. Fireball marks the impact point. Behind Mitchell, 51 more Thunderbolts strafe the airfield systematically. Professional, ruthless. 9 Focke-Wulfs destroyed on ground before engines even start. 4 more shot down during takeoff roll or initial climb. The remaining German fighters abort their mission and scatter. Not one reaches the invasion beaches. The 56th returns to Boxted at 0915 hours. Refuels, rearmed, launches again at 1100 hours. Second mission of D-Day. Armed reconnaissance over Falaise area. The group intercepts German fighter bombers attempting to reach Allied positions. Junkers, 88s. Focke-Wulf, 80 fighter bombers. Messerschmitt, 110 night fighters pressed into daylight service. The Luftwaffe throwing everything available into stopping the invasion. By sunset on June 6, the 56th Fighter Group has flown 97 individual sorties, 23 German aircraft destroyed, 15 on ground. 8 in air, 0 American losses, 0 damage to any P-47 beyond normal combat wear. The invasion succeeds partly because German fighters never reach the beaches in significant numbers. June 6th is one day. The campaign continues through June, July, August. The 56th flies constant missions supporting breakout from Normandy. They strafe German convoys retreating east, destroy fuel depots, attack rail yards. The P-47's 850 caliber machine guns proved devastating against ground targets. Armor-piercing incendiary ammunition penetrates truck engines, fuel tanks, locomotives. Ground attack role discovered by necessity becomes major mission alongside air combat. Mitchell flies 53 missions between D-Day and August 12th. Every mission brings him home. Every mission proves tactics work against adapted German defenses. Every mission keeps promise made to Mary 15 months earlier. Find a way. He found the way. Through mathematics, through physics, through refusing to accept that the difficult means stop. August 12, 1944, Mitchell receives orders that change everything. Transfer to 479th Fighter Group. Struggling unit equipped with P-38 Lightnings converting to P-51 Mustangs. 8th Air Force needs Mitchell to rebuild them the way he rebuilt the 56th. His time with the Wolfpack is over. Lieutenant Colonel Jim Bradford assumes command. Bradford flew with the group since January 1943. Understands Mitchell's tactics completely. Practiced them, refined them, taught them to replacement pilots who arrived knowing nothing about vertical fighting. The transition is seamless. Mitchell transfers with mixed feelings. Pride in what the 56th accomplished. Confidence Bradford will maintain standards, but also understanding that leaving command means leaving family. These pilots are his responsibility. His brothers. Leaving them feels like abandoning promise, even though promise was to bring them home, and bringing them home succeeded. He writes Mary that night, explains the transfer, explains that duty requires going where needed most, explains that Bradford is ready and the 56th will continue succeeding without him, does not explain the guilt he feels at leaving or the understanding that every transfer brings him closer to odds catching up. Mary's response arrives 5 days later. You kept your promise, Frank. You found a way. You brought them home. Now help another group find their way. Other mothers need their sons home too. David asks about you every day. Come home when you can. Permission granted, understanding given. Mitchell reports to 479th Fighter Group August 18th. Different aircraft. P-51 Mustang instead of P-47 Thunderbolt. Lighter, faster, longer range. But same tactics, height advantage, diving attacks, speed over maneuverability. Mathematics remain constant even when aircraft change. October 30th, 1944. The mission that ends everything. Mitchell leads the 479th Fighter Group over Germany. P-51 Mustangs instead of Thunderbolts. Lighter aircraft, different handling characteristics. But same vertical tactics, same altitude discipline, same understanding that physics matter more than aircraft type when physics are applied correctly. The weather deteriorates during mission. Clouds building, turbulence increasing, cold front moving through area faster than forecast predicted. Mitchell checks instruments, altimeter, airspeed, artificial horizon. Everything normal until it is not. Severe turbulence hits at 18,000 feet. Clear air turbulence. No warning, no visual indication. Just violent forces slamming aircraft up and down and sideways. G-forces alternating positive and negative. Structure groaning under stress that airframe was never designed to withstand. Mitchell fights the controls, trying to maintain level flight, trying to ride out the turbulence. The airframe shudders, metal screaming, then sound like rifle shot. Loud crack audible over engine noise and wind. The right wing separates from fuselage. Structural failure. P-51 not designed for sustained extreme turbulence. Lighter structure optimized for speed and range sacrifices strength under extreme loads. Physics claiming payment for design choices made on drawing boards years ago. The aircraft enters violent spin. Mitchell knows immediately he cannot recover. Right wing gone means no roll control, no lift balance, just falling in uncontrolled rotation toward Earth 4 miles below. He reaches for canopy jettison handle, pulls hard, canopy blows away, cold air rushing in at 300 miles per hour. He releases harness, tries to climb out. Centrifugal forces from spin pull him back violently. He tries again. Force is stronger. He is pinned. Third attempt. Uses legs against instrument panel, pushes with everything, breaks free, tumbles clear of disintegrating aircraft. Falling, spinning, sky and ground alternating in vision. He finds ripcord, pulls, parachute deploys, opening shock violent but successful. Canopy fills. Oscillation dampens. He hangs in harness, drifting, descending, watching his aircraft spin into German forest and explode on impact 3 miles distant. He lands in trees. Canopy catches in branches. He hangs 10 feet above ground, releases harness, drops, lands hard, ankle twist, pain shoots up leg, sprain or broken. Does not matter. Must move. German soldiers will investigate the crash. Mitchell evades for 3 days, living off land, avoiding German patrols, moving west toward Allied lines, ankle swelling inside boot, each step agony. But pain is irrelevant when survival depends on continuing. He almost makes it. 3 miles from safety, 3 miles from Allied positions. German patrol finds him in barn where he's sheltered during daylight hours. 6 soldiers, rifles pointed, no escape possible. They search him, find letter from Mary in flight suit pocket, worn from 16 months being carried. Read repeatedly during missions, creased and stained, but words still clear. 5 mothers received telegrams because you could not save them. Find a way, Frank. German officer reads it carefully, looks at Mitchell with something like respect, understands what the letter means. Promises made, promises kept. Warriors recognizing warriors regardless of flags or nations. November 2nd, 1944. Mitchell becomes prisoner of war. Transported to Stalag Luftwaffe, POW camp for Allied aircrew. Senior Allied officer by rank. Responsible for 9,000 prisoners. Different war now. Not tactical. Administrative. Maintaining discipline and morale among men whose war is over, but whose captivity continues indefinitely. Mitchell applies same systematic approach to POW management that he applied to fighter tactics. Problems have solutions. Analyze situation. Develop plan. Execute with discipline. He organizes committees, establishes procedures, protects prisoners from German attempts at intelligence gathering, prevents despair through structure and purpose. Mary receives telegram November 5th. Missing in action, presumed captured. Not dead, not wounded, captured. She holds David, now 2.5 years old, too young to understand war or capture or why Daddy is not home. She tells him Daddy is alive. Daddy will come home when war ends. Just needs to wait. Mitchell spends 6 months as PO who maintains discipline, applies mathematics to problems of survival and resistance, and protecting younger prisoners from breaking under stress. The same thinking that created diving tactics creates system for enduring captivity. But the 56 Fighter Group does not need Mitchell anymore. His tactics are doctrine now. His mathematics are taught to every replacement pilot. His innovations belong to everyone. Under Bradford's command, the 56th continues operations through final 7 months of war. Battle of the Bulge, crossing the Rhine, final push into Germany. The group flies its last combat mission April 21st, 1945, 18 days before Germany surrenders. Bradford proves Mitchell built something sustainable. Leadership transition demonstrates that innovation properly institutionalized survives loss of innovator. Mitchell created doctrine, not cult of personality. System larger than individual. The group produces 39 fighter aces, more than any other 8th Air Force fighter group. Major Frank Carson finishes with 28 victories, highest total of any American pilot in European theater. Captain Robert Hayes ends with 27. The pilot who survived 200 cannon hits proved P-47 could both absorb punishment and deal it effectively. Lieutenant Colonel Jim Bradford claims 22.5 victories, proves Mitchell's system works without Mitchell, proves mathematics transcend individuals when mathematics are correct and teaching is thorough. These were not lucky pilots, were disciplined tacticians who understood physics, knew aircraft capabilities, refused to fight enemies fight, made Luftwaffe fight their fight. Luftwaffe lost. By April 1945, other P-47 groups across 8th Air Force have adopted variations of Mitchell's tactics. Combined Thunderbolt groups destroy over 2,000 German aircraft in air-to-air combat. The supposedly obsolete fighter becomes most successful American aircraft in European theater. Strategic bombing campaign succeeds because fighters like P-47 make it succeed. Bomber losses decline from 20% per mission in 1943 to less than 2% by 1945. German industrial production collapses. Ball bearing factories destroyed, aircraft plants demolished, oil refineries burned, tank factories crushed. When Air Force Historical Research Agency compiles final statistics, 56th Fighter Group's record is undeniable. 677.5 German aircraft destroyed in air-to-air combat. Highest aerial victory total of any fighter group in 8th Air Force. 100 more victories than second-place group. Only fighter group in European theater that flew same aircraft type from first mission to last mission. P-47. Thunderbolt that German pilots called too heavy for combat destroyed more Luftwaffe fighters than any other American aircraft. Not because airframe changed, because tactics changed. Mitchell's diving attacks, altitude discipline, refusal to dogfight, mathematical approach to aerial combat. These innovations transformed strategic bombing campaign, made D-Day possible, won air war over Europe. May 8, 1945, Germany surrenders. Soviet troops liberate Stalag Luftwaffe on May 2nd, 6 days before official surrender. Mitchell organizes orderly evacuation of 9,000 prisoners, prevents chaos, prevents deaths from celebration or violence or confusion that often follows sudden liberation. He returns to England May 10th, processing, debriefing, medical examination. 6 months captivity left him 20 pounds lighter, harder, older, ankle never healed properly. Slight limp remaining, but alive. Returns to United States May 20th. Train from New York to Michigan. Mary and David waiting at Grand Rapids Station. David now 3 years old. Barely remembers father who left when he was infant. Knows daddy from letters and photographs and stories mother told during long nights. Mitchell kneels despite ankle pain. Hugs son. Promises never to leave again. Promise he can keep because war is over and promises matter. And this promise costs nothing except staying home, which is exactly where he wants to be. Mary understands her husband returned different. 6 months POW changed him. 20 months combat before that changed him. The man who left in 1943 is not man who returned in 1945. But core remains. Mathematical mind. Disciplined approach. Commitment to solving problems through understanding rather than force. Mitchell remains Air Force. Career officer, serves through Cold War, commands fighter wings, trains next generation, and applies lessons learned 1943 through 1944 to jet-age warfare. Vietnam-era F-4 Phantom pilots use energy management tactics derived directly from Mitchell's P-47 doctrine. Height advantage, speed advantage, boom and zoom. The principles remain valid even as aircraft speeds double and triple. Physics unchanged by technology. Mathematics constant across generations. The 56th Fighter Group disbands October 1945. Reforms 1946. Serves through Cold War. Flies F-86 Sabres in air defense missions. Converts to F-100 Super Sabres. Then F-4 Phantoms. Today, unit trains F-35 pilots at Eglin Air Force Base, Florida. Wolfpack continues. Mitchell retires 1966 as full colonel. Never received General Star despite leading one of most successful fighter groups in American history. Some said outspoken criticism of senior officers cost him promotion. Others said Air Force preferred leaders who do not question doctrine publicly. But Mitchell changed warfare regardless of rank. Mathematical approach to aerial combat influenced fighter tactics for next 30 years. Legacy measured not in promotions but in lives saved, in battles won through thinking differently than tradition demanded. June 1965, Paris, France. Le Bourget Airport, International Air Show. Klaus Bergmann attends as Lufthansa delegation representative. Age 53 now, gray hair replacing black, weight on frame that was lean during war. Face lined by years and responsibility of flying, paying passengers across Atlantic in commercial jets. Captain on Boeing 707 transatlantic routes. 20 years since war ended. Germany rebuilt through Marshall Plan and democracy and determination. NATO member now, allied with America against Soviet Union. Former enemies, current partners, because Cold War requires different alliances than World War II demanded. Klaus walks exhibition halls, sees display titled American Fighter Aces of World War II. Photographs and citations. Colonel Frank Mitchell featured prominently. Distinguished Service Cross. Led 56th Fighter Group October 1943 through August 1944. Developed diving tactics that revolutionized fighter combat. Klaus recognizes immediately. The American. The pilot. October 4th, 1943. The engagement that taught lessons Klaus carried 22 years. The day one American pilot defeated his formation through mathematics and physics, and understanding that heavier wins when heavier chooses vertical dimension. He asked exhibition staff, simple question in accented English, learned post-war. Is Colonel Mitchell attending show? Yes, sir. Colonel Mitchell retired. Attending as United States Air Force delegation. Expected this afternoon for reception. Klaus waits 3 hours. Coffee. Conversation with other delegates. But mind elsewhere. Thinking about October 4th. About 5 pilots lost. About understanding that physics matter more than courage when physics are applied correctly and systematically. Finally, Mitchell arrives. Age 51. Gray hair. Still lean despite years. Slight limp from ankle that never healed properly. Still carries himself like fighter pilot. Some things age changes. Some things age cannot touch. Klaus approaches during reception. Nervous but determined. Colonel Mitchell, I am Klaus Bergmann. Former Hauptmann Jagdgeschwader from October 4th, 1943. I was one of pilots you attacked over Holland. I wanted to meet man who changed aerial warfare. To shake your hand. To tell you story. Mitchell studies Klaus carefully. Sees former enemy. Sees current colleague. Sees airline captain who once tried to kill him. Extends hand without hesitation. Hauptmann Bergmann. I remember that mission. Your formation fought well. You survived. I am glad. They talked 2 hours about October 4th from both perspectives, about tactics, about physics, about understanding that warriors respect warriors regardless of flags served during conflicts that end while respect endures. Klaus explains post-war life. After war, I became airline captain. Lufthansa. Flew DC-4s initially, then Constellations, now 707s transatlantic. Very different from Focke-Wulf 190. But sometimes at 30,000 feet over Atlantic, I remember October 4th. Remember seeing thunderbolts diving at impossible speed. Remember understanding Americans fight with mathematics, not just courage. He pauses, voice quieter. That lesson saved lives. 1962. Flying 707 Frankfurt to New York. 300 miles over Atlantic. 2 engines failed. Fire in number 3. Electrical failure in number 4. Boeing 707 designed to fly on 2 engines, but barely. Margins very tight. Fuel consumption higher. Nearest airport 300 miles distant through headwinds. Klaus continues, I calculated, like you taught. Understood landing possible, but probability uncertain. 183 passengers, depending on pilot, who learned 20 years earlier from American who destroyed my formation. I used energy management, traded altitude for speed carefully, maintained control through asymmetric thrust, landed at Shannon with 0 fuel remaining. All 183 survived. Mitchell listens carefully, responds slowly. You saved 183 lives using lessons learned from combat where we tried killing each other. That is strange mercy. War teaches skills that peace uses. Killing becomes saving when context changes, but principles remain constant. Klaus nods. You taught me that the difficult becomes possible when mathematics are applied correctly. That physics always win. Those lessons saved passengers who never knew their pilot learned from enemy 22 years ago. They exchange addresses, promise correspondence. 2 men who were enemies, who tried to kill each other over Holland, who now share understanding that humanity transcends nationalism when wisdom replaces hatred. They meet again 1972. Klaus visits Michigan, stays with Mitchell family, meets Mary properly, meets David, now 30 years old, married, own children, normal American family, normal German visitor. Friendship built on mutual respect, transcending everything except basic human decency. Klaus and Mitchell correspond until Klaus's death, 1996, age 84. Christmas cards every year without fail. Occasional letters about grandchildren and retirement, and understanding that warriors can become friends when war ends and wisdom replaces hatred that war creates. Mitchell dies 1994, age 80. Heart failure. Peaceful, surrounded by family in Michigan home where he grew up. Mary survives until 2001, age 87. 56 years married after war that separated them 20 months. 2024. National Museum, United States Air Force. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Ohio. Republic P-47D. Thunderbolt sits in climate-controlled gallery. Restored to exact configuration, flown by 56th Fighter Group. Silver natural metal finish. Black and white invasion stripes. Unit markings authentic. Placard reads carefully. Republic P-47D Thunderbolt. Flown by 56th Fighter Group Wolfpack, commanded by Colonel Frank Mitchell, 1943 to 1944. Group developed revolutionary diving tactics that transformed fighter combat. 677.5 aerial victories. Highest total of any fighter group in 8th Air Force. Mitchell's mathematical approach to tactics influenced fighter doctrine through Vietnam War and beyond. Visitors photograph aircraft. Read placard. Most do not fully understand significance. Just old airplane from old war. But veterans know. Fighter pilots know. Anyone who understands that innovation matters and knows. This aircraft represents a moment when one officer decided doctrine was wrong and physics was right. When mathematics proved stronger than tradition. When refusing to fight enemies became key to winning war. Retired Air Force Colonel stands before aircraft explaining to grandson, considering Air Force Academy. Colonel is 68, Vietnam veteran, F-4 pilot, applied Mitchell's energy management tactics over North Vietnam 1968. Grandson is 18, listening carefully. This aircraft grandson represents fundamental truth about military service. Problem was, P-47 could not turn like German fighters. Traditional solution was replace aircraft. Colonel Mitchell's solution was change tactics. Used aircraft strengths instead of compensating for weaknesses. That thinking saved lives. Won battles. Changed war. The principles he developed October 1943 still valid today. Modern fighters are faster, more maneuverable, more lethal, but physics unchanged. Energy management still matters. Altitude advantage still matters. Speed advantage still matters. Refusing to fight enemies still matters. When you enter academy, you will learn doctrine. You will learn tradition. You will learn how things are supposed to be done. Remember this aircraft. Remember Colonel Mitchell. Remember that doctrine serves mission. Mission does not serve doctrine. When doctrine fails, change doctrine. That is leadership. Captain Robert Hayes lived to 89, survived 200 cannon hits June 1943. Proved P-47 could take punishment. Later proved P-47 could deal punishment through tactics Mitchell developed. Wrote memoir 1987 titled 7 Tons of Thunder, describes transition from failure to success through one man willing to question everything. Lieutenant Colonel Jim Bradford, retired Colonel 1960. Proved Mitchell's system worked without Mitchell. Leadership succession demonstrated innovation properly. Institutionalized survives loss of innovator. His son flew F-15s Gulf War. Grandson flies F-22s today. Legacy continues through generations. Klaus Bergmann's daughter became Lufthansa pilot. First female captain in company history. Flew 747s until retirement 2010. Her son flies Airbus A380s today. 4 generations of pilots from former enemies, now allies, teaching same lessons across different flags. Mary Mitchell lived to 2001. Raised David alone 20 months while Frank fought overseas. Waited 6 months while Frank was PO. Understood that promise she demanded he make. June 1943 saved hundreds of pilots, but nearly cost her husband. She never regretted asking. He never regretted promising. Some promises are worth keeping regardless of cost. David Mitchell served Air Force 1959 to 1985. F-4 Phantom pilot Vietnam. 200 missions. Survived. Applied father's energy management tactics over North Vietnam. Retired colonel. 2 sons served. Both pilots. One flies C-17s, one instructs F-16s. Mitchell family tradition continues through fourth generation because service matters and promises made in 1943 still echo in 2024. The Silver Thunderbolt sits silent in museum, representing moment when the difficult became possible through refusal to accept tradition as final answer. When mathematics rewrote doctrine, when one officer questioned everything and thousands lived because questioning was allowed and answered correctly. 7 tons, 8 guns, 2,000 horsepower. Not enough to turn with Focke-Wulf 190. More than enough to die faster. Choose battlefield that favors strengths. Win. That is Colonel Frank Mitchell. That is 56th Fighter Group. That is lesson worth remembering when tradition says the difficult means stop and mathematics say the difficult means possible. And possible is what courage achieves when courage is applied intelligently instead of just bravely. The legacy endures. The tactics endure. The understanding endures. Physics do not care about courage. Physics care about mass and velocity and angles. Master physics. Apply courage. Win. October 4th, 1943 started it. Berlin proved it. Normandy finished it. But the lesson continues. Through every generation. Through every pilot who learns that the difficult becomes possible when you refuse to accept that mathematics lie or tradition is final answer. 7 tons diving at 450 miles per hour defeats 4 tons turning at 22 seconds. Every single time. When 7 tons chooses to dive instead of turn. That is mathematics. That is physics. That is promise kept through understanding that some problems have solutions when you refuse to accept that the difficult means impossible. Find a way or stop sending boys to die. Frank Mitchell found the way. Through mathematics, proving stronger than tradition. Through physics, overriding doctrine. Through one man willing to question everything and prove that questioning saves lives when answers are correct. The promise endures. The legacy continues. The lesson remains. Forever.